I think we're good.
I think we're good. I think we did it.
We're live. Hi, Sophie.
We're live. Hi.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you guys so much for having me.
For people who don't know what's happening or are just getting hopped onto the live feed, we are the Wonder Jam. My name is Adam. This is Allie. And we invited our friend Sophie to come talk. And what we're doing in these wild and wacky times in the world is when we see people who are doing cool things in the world in this moment, in the midst of all of this, we want to invite them to share some of that with our friends and the people who pay attention to us, which is mostly a bunch of sort of like ambitious, creative, scrappy business and brand builders, but they're also humans. And so what we'd watched Sophie doing, we were like, oh, we want to get this out into the world. So Sophie, could you introduce yourself to all these people?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name's Sophie. I'm a life coach for women who are struggling with codependency. So if you're not familiar with the term, codependency is basically just a disordered way of relating to other people, either people you're in like intimate relationships with or total strangers. The women I work with feel pretty out of control of their own lives, pretty like deep into people pleasing, no boundaries. They feel out of control of one or multiple areas of their lives because of these issues. They don't really know how to make decisions. They don't know what decisiveness feels like. They have like low self-worth outside of a sense of like purpose in other people's lives. All of these kinds of issues. And I'm sure you can understand how this will deeply affect your effectiveness as an entrepreneur. My clients are entrepreneurs. Some of them are not, but that's the work I do. So pretty much I help these women take back power and control over their own lives. It's power that they always had. They just tried to put it elsewhere, or they didn't know that they had it. They didn't know how to use it. That's what I do.
That's amazing.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about, so it's not what you've always done. We knew you in a previous career. Talk a little bit about, so kind of the theme of what we're trying to talk to people about in these moments is evolution. As evolution is this thing that organically happens when we experience pressures, we evolve as living creatures. They all of us evolve. And you have had a couple of evolutions. You want to walk through a little bit like what that's looked like in the middle of this?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. If you want to just like put me on blast. It is. I've had so many evolutions.
Hey, he's like,
oh my gosh. Yeah.
Sure.
No, I'm like, I'm giving it to you like a trophy. Like if you're
and I love that.
Yeah.
I think that's the way we need to start thinking about it too, is because I had so much shame around it too. I mean, oh my God, I started my coaching practice a little over a year ago, and I didn't tell anyone until just a few months ago. I was like, I'll just work with strangers and tell everyone that I work for the CIA. It's like, no one has to know that I'm a coach. My codependency like led me into a career in nonprofits where I was really like pumped up about controlling the world. I was like, if I can control everyone and prevent any suffering of any kind to any human ever, then I'll feel okay. And then the world will be okay. It's like so fun. So, and it didn't work as well as I was hoping it might.
Yeah, that sounds hard. Yeah.
Dude, oh my God, it was so bad. So anyways, obviously I hit rock bottom. Like I had a rock bottom moment. And I was like, what do I do now? Like, it was identity shattering. And so I thought, well, I'll do the two things in life that I know make me the happiest, which was working in a coffee shop, making espresso, and doing art. So I started doing that, and it was great. I mean, those two things like revived me. They really did. And from that, I kind of accidentally started a jewelry company, grew that over the past 3 years. And that was such a journey. I mean, I don't know, if someone asked me like, what's the one thing you recommend someone do in their lifetime to like evolve as a human? It's start a business. That will bring up every challenge you will ever have to overcome. every limiting belief you thought about yourself and the world. I mean, all of it. You guys know.
Yeah.
So,
for sure.
so that was the past 3 years of my life. The past, I mean, the best years and the craziest years, you know.
Yeah.
And I started coaching about a year ago. Did not ever. I mean, I always thought coaching would be a part of my life, you know, as a consumer, because I've had a coach for 5 years and she changed my life, blah, blah, blah. I never thought I'd be a practitioner, but I am now.
Yeah.
And the way that happened, it was like, it honestly, looking back and in the moment too, it didn't feel like an active choice I was making. I was like, this has to be. This is the way it has to be. And it's been amazing.
That's cool.
That's really cool. Yeah. I love that.
Do you, so talk about some of what you're doing with people now. You talked about working with people on codependency, helping their either people pleasing, or that shows up in a whole bunch of different ways in a person's life. In these moments, what have you found? Actually, I'm gonna take a question. We had a question inside the Gem Club that somebody that Kate had asked, and I think Kate had thrown in a comment over on YouTube, and so I want to make sure we address that. It seems like she might be paying attention there right now, and we know that Kate is working from home. She got some family at home. She got like wildness happening. But Kate had this comment that I see a lot of people echo. Allie and I echo it, that in this new world that happened where we are hanging out at our homes, still working, our attention spans seem to shrink. Like there's like, Allie can be a wildly focused person. I can be easily distracted, but I have a lot of disciplines that help me stay focused. But even in this, those seem to go away. Why is that happening to people? What is like, it seems like it would be easier for me to focus on things because I'm literally just staying in the same spot, but it doesn't seem to work out that way. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I can. I have a few thoughts about this, and I think it's so funny. I think that this is an issue that we've all had. It just is under a microscope now. So if you're having problems focusing or managing your time or into a routine or some sort of system, that's an issue that existed before. You're just getting this opportunity to look at it in maybe a deeper way than you ever wanted to before. So yeah, I think that we have this perception of focus and like attention that it's outside of our control. It's just like a circumstance. It just is. But I do want to remind everyone that your focus and your control over your time is entirely in your hands, even though it doesn't feel like it. So with Kate, she asked a question about kids, which I love. She's like, how do I focus? They're like crawling all over me. They're like, Mommy, can we cut your hair? No, like, please don't. I need to do a live stream later. I think the solution to that is to plan for all of it. There's a system, this coach, Lauren Cash, she and my coach, Brooke Castillo, developed a system called Monday Hour One. It's all about planning. It's like the most amazing time control system I've ever learned. But anyways, it's all about not arguing with reality, not expecting to be different for it to be different than what is. So you know your kids are going to interrupt you every 45 minutes, plan for it. So just decide that that's going to be something that you have to work around. And, you know, involve your kids in that planning process and let them know if they need something outside of the every 45-minute break, that's a problem they get to solve for themselves. You know, like this obviously is different if you are changing a newborn's diaper. That's a different issue. But I think involving your kids in that planning process is important. And setting yourself up for success so that when you do have a quick 5 minutes, maybe, I mean, sometimes it is just 5 minutes, like parenting is crazy, that you have put systems in place that enable you to not have to think about a lot of things in order to be effective in those 5 minutes. So how can you maybe, okay, like this is another tool. And usually I don't give people tools. Usually it's more mind work, but this is a great tool. Do you have a content calendar and you like fill everything out? You could be like peeing on the toilet, filling out your content calendar. And then you have the 5 minutes to actually post it. it's there. There's nothing for you to think about. Like, just minimize the amount of legwork in the moment that your brain has to do, because if you don't, your brain will just, the gas tank runs low so easily and so quickly. And like, yes, this does take planning and forethought and like, maybe more time up front, but the amount of time you save when you have planned these things out, when you have set those systems in place, will not only save you time, but also sanity and money in your business. And you could hire an assistant, but maybe you're just not as effective as you could be. And maybe you could save that money and just like kill it.
I was going to say, I think for me during this time, it's been helpful to write down certain things that do pop into my head. And we don't have kids, completely different scenario at our house, but just being able to not let those thoughts and tasks and things like that kind of, I don't know, like popcorn around my brain.
Sit in an open loop. Yeah. I think documenting all that is such a big deal. I think for me, I've seen, and it's been an odd moment is for everybody, but for me, I've seen all of those practices that I had sort of developed to help to be more mindful are like, they used to be nice. Like it used to be like, oh, if I'm going to have a great day today, I'm going to perform all of those. And if I'm going to have an average day, maybe I'm not doing those things that work for me. And now it is a bunch like, if I don't get to do those things, I will go bonkers. I think the other part of it that is, it seems like the world also, there's like a lot of things to be concerned about accurately, especially like in the state of the world, there's a lot of people without rent. People have like family members who are struggling financially or who are at least uncertain financially, if not struggling. And then health, like we're experiencing a wave of people who are getting sick or going to be getting sick. And those are accurate things to let, thinking about those things is real. And I think sometimes it's easy to, I found like in that first week when so many of our friends and clients and whatever were losing their any sort of idea of stability that we had built up with a business, you start to realize like this is very fragile. And at the end of the day, I would be like, wow, I'm like worried for a lot of people, not just for like one or two people. Or one or two small scenarios. It's like globally, and concern. So it's tough.
Yeah, I want to talk about what you just said about certainty. Well, we'll go back to certainty or uncertainty, but also Adam and Allie, you guys taught me this back when we had like a business consulting session, I don't know how many years ago at this point. And you talked about tasks that were, I think this was back in Diamond membership. Like this was old school. And you were talking about tasks that are urgent versus important versus non-urgent versus non-important. And categorize tasks in that way so that you can prioritize what you're doing. So like, like an email just came in, that's urgent, but it's probably not important. So you don't need to be replying to that right now. I know your brain wants to because it's easier. It's just like a little dopamine hit that your brain can get real quick, but that email isn't serving your purpose right now in this moment, which is doing that post because you're peeing and your kids are outside the door. Like, you know what I mean? Like you could send that email, but you're not gonna. So I think that urgent versus important tool helps me get all that shit in line too.
So true.
And then with uncertainty, like we never actually had it. We just thought we did. Like 2 months ago when you were making plans for March. I hope you had.
It was actually uncertain.
They were never gonna happen. Like it wasn't like you were on stable footing then, and now you're, walking on nothing but water. Like they were never stable. You were never, you never had that certainty. You just didn't know. So, and that's true in every moment. No matter how much money you have in the bank, no matter how big your business is, you just, and I think, some people could hear that and be like, well, fuck, I should be a lot more afraid than I am now. But that's not the point. The fear actually doesn't produce anything helpful. Fear causes spinning. Fear causes worst case scenario dreaming, which I'll talk in a minute, that can be helpful sometimes, but only in an empowering way. I think understanding that we are always never guaranteed anything ever can actually be used in a positive.
Yeah, for sure.
Truth.
So what can you do? How can you function in the world? How can you build a business and raise a family in a world that is inherently uncertain? That's just the nature of our reality here. The answer, I think, is, I tell a lot of my clients to focus either on the present moment right now during this time of crisis or long-term future. So if you focus right now, yes, there are people like, losing their rent, and I am losing sleep over that personthere There's like a lot going on, but there's also your kids need lunch, your vendors need to be like replied to. There are things to be done right now in the present moment that you can really ground into to be like, we're going to keep this train rolling. And there's also the long-term perspective of like 5 years down the road. Like, let's focus there. How can you, and this goes back to the systems that you didn't have before in your business that are showing now. It's like very apparent now where the holes are in the efficiency of your business. How can you set your business up now to be ready for blast off when this is done? I think focusing there is great.
Yeah, for sure. I know this is kind of this, I thought of this before we started talking about what we're talking about now. And this probably wasn't on any kind of like list of questions, maybe. I don't know if there were any lists of questions shared, but how, with everyone being stuck inside with maybe family or like someone that they're in a relationship with in relation to codependency, what are some like helpful takeaways or tips that you would give someone who either lives with someone who's codependent or is codependent themselves?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that. So I'm working with a couple clients right now who are married to narcissists. So being in quarantine with a narcissistic person, or being in quarantine with even kids, like being a codependent in that scenario is really hard. And being a recovering codependent, it's hard for me to be here and not, out there doing whatever. It is challenging. So I'm going to take this time to mention, I do have a 7-day like training guide that I'm releasing tomorrow. It's all about how to live your best codependency-free life in quarantine. So the things I'm talking about, I'm really excited about it because people are asking all the same questions. So these questions are about boundaries, obviously. How do you have boundaries when you're in the same house with someone? How do you have emotional boundaries, physical boundaries, sexual boundaries, financial boundaries? How do you keep those, and how do you bend them when it feels good to bend them? Like sometimes one of the modules in this 7-day guide is connection during codependency. And if you are feeling really disconnected from people, that can be a sign that you might want to soften a boundary a little bit in one instance. Not like all across the board, but just in one instance, because that boundary might not be as necessary after a certain amount of time. The boundary initially is put in place because you can't protect yourself. So you need to like make a rule. But like once you've established a certain degree of like self-generated strength and I don't know, I guess protection for yourself, you can see if you need to soften a boundary. Communication is often not really effective when dealing with people who don't respect your boundaries. And that's kind of a good thing because it totally eliminates this idea that other people should be responsible for upholding your own boundaries. So this is like a crash course on how to be a codependent who doesn't make other people responsible for your codependency. That's an issue I see coming up so often. I'm like, you guys can't hand this manual book over to your partner and be like, here's how you help me heal from codependency. That's the same shit, right?
Right.
So really just, and this goes back to the business stuff too. I mean, this is like radical personal responsibility, and it's not harsh, and it's not mean, and it's not self-blaming. It is like the most amazing self-sovereignty you could ever ask for. And this is your opportunity now during quarantine to develop it. It's the understanding that your emotions don't exist without of you. Your emotions don't exist outside of yourself. Your emotions exist within you and can be regulated by you and deserve to be acknowledged by you. Part of this is not, this like weird, like, I don't know, stoic 24/7 production efficiency bullshit. Part of being a functional human being, functioning at the highest level, is an acknowledgement and a processing of your emotions. Whatever they are, whenever they come up, that to me is part of living a functional, like highly functional, successful life. So nowhere in this living your best life during quarantine will I tell you to, resist or push down anything you're feeling, no matter how painful it is. Because there's a lot of like scary stuff coming up for people.
I love that answer.
Is that helpful?
Yeah, no, that's super good. What would be for someone who's watching this, who's like, codependency is something that maybe doesn't feel like it applies to me, but I find myself relating to a little bit of what you're saying. But sometimes when I first interacted with, or I heard somebody talk about codependency, I was like, oh, that kind of like, there's a bunch of that I relate to. I remember we were in a car and I like looked up on my phone the definition of that word, because that felt like a diagnosable term. Like it felt like a clinical diagnosis. And I was like, oh, am I that? Like it felt like an intense version of describing whatever I was feeling. Do you feel like, for someone who's here who might be like, oh, I kind of relate to some of the things that Sophie's saying, but I don't know if I'm codependent or not. Like, well, how would you respond to that person?
Yeah, I would just say that we live in a culture that encourages and conditions us to be codependent, to rely on other people for our own emotional well-being and to take responsibility for other people's well-being. I mean, you hear it as early as like preschool, like, don't do that, that makes her sad, or apologize, you made him angry and you made him like hit you or something. It's like, what? Like, no. And then that just continues. You hear, I mean, there's this horrific dominant cultural narrative of, especially in romantic relationships, of like, you are mine, or like, I am yours entire. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, it's just so rampant and sort of, it's just all over the place. Like, no one's safe from it. You know what I mean? So even if you don't identify as a codependent, I'm sure, I mean, especially as a business owner, as a parent, as a child of an aging parent, there are codependent tendencies all over that you just have to like, just be a little aware of. Like, hey, am I sacrificing myself because I want to make this other person happy? Hey, am I giving at the expense of myself, or does this feel like it's coming from a good place? Hey, was I mad about that because it's something we need to talk about? Or was I mad about that because I'm trying to control them in a way so that I can feel better? Like, am I giving in order to manipulate or elicit a response, or am I giving to give? I mean, it's everywhere.
Yeah. Oh, it 100% is. And I could see some people don't like to put a title on themselves, whether that's like being an introvert or like, a personality type. And so I think understanding that that's kind of prevalent since we were born, I think it helps people be more aware of how they're acting in their relationships, even if there's, they don't want to assign some sort of title to themselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the truth. And for when you've been talking to people, what have been some things that you've seen people do that works really well in these moments that you've found like, wow, they're like you talked about, this is a moment in time where some of those struggles that we maybe were always there are under a microscope, or they become heightened or more elevated. I noticed, like, for myself, I had this habit and routine of, it's actually the last time I saw you, I had this habit and routine of, in the mornings, I would just wake up and like groggily walk down to the coffee shop and go like sit and read or whatever. And so I like doing that. And that was a nice sort of habit that helped me. I like that habit, but that habit is not possible anymore. And so I have to like walk downstairs into my basement, but I don't get to do that same routine. And I was like, oh, wow, it's like hard for me to start reading. Like the walk was what was important for me. And like the getting outside and things like that.
You go in the basement?
Or not a basement, our first floor.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, why are you in the basement?
What are you doing in the basement?
Yeah. No, our basement is
It's kind of creepy.
terrifying.
That's why I was like, oh no, are you okay?
Yeah.
Anyway,
it's not a basement. If
but I think
like
so some of those like habits and routines that maybe had been masking some of those things in the past are now taken away, right? And so it's exposed a bit. What have you seen people doing that has helped them? Or like maybe share some stories of how people you've seen evolve or what's been coming, like what good has come out of this?
I love that so much. You just phrased it in the most perfect way. What habits were able to mask these problems that now don't exist anymore? And so you're being forced to look at them. I think that's genius. And I mean, I think focus is a huge one. I don't tend to use the word discipline a lot because discipline isn't really what's needed in order to stick to a schedule. And in order to do a lot of the things you want to do. So like another thing I see in codependency a lot is either over drinking or overeating. And this can take many forms. I mean, shopping, like any addiction. I mean, scrolling Instagram, playing some stupid game, whatever, it doesn't matter. A compulsive behavior that is used to numb the pain of whatever you're dealing with, whatever. So, in quarantine, I mean, you see all these memes about like, I'm about to come out of this quarantine 400 pounds and like drunk. And I'm like, but why? Like, you don't have to. Like, I haven't had a drop of alcohol this whole quarantine. Like, you don't have to. It's socially acceptable. It's funny to talk about. But whenever you are reaching for that thing, it's because you're trying to avoid an emotion. So the emotion could be the emotion of confusion or not knowing what's next and that uncertainty being scary. So fear, trying to avoid the fear. It could be trying to avoid boredom and so you eat or you drink. It could be trying to avoid grief because a lot of people, that's one thing. I'm glad I just mentioned that. A lot of people are going through grief. This is a total shift of anything we thought was coming. I mean, we just got turned on our heads a little bit, some more than others. So understanding that, again, part of being a functional human being is recognizing, feeling, properly feeling, not just like, oh, it's there, but properly feeling and releasing those emotions. And being open for them to come up when they do again, because healing is cyclical and emotions it's not you're checking a box. Like that's what people say a lot. They're like, I thought I already went through this. I thought I already felt this. And I'm like, honey, like, let's
it's not
be real.
just one. For sure.
It's not just one. So, I mean, issues like over drinking and overeating, issues like focus, issues like feeling totally out of control of your schedule. These existed before. You're getting a chance to work on them now in this like hyperspace time environment. Look at it. Like, why are you, when you reach in the bag, why are you reaching? And like, just, you can still, I'm not telling you to not reach in the bag, like do it, but look at your thoughts as you're doing it. What are you feeling? What are you thinking that's driving you to do that? What are you thinking that's making it almost impossible to not put it in your mouth? Like, just be really aware, because if you don't get that awareness, you can do all the like weird Instagram exercise programs you want, and you can like buy all the time crunching apps that you want, but there's nothing that will replace you actually having to deal with why you aren't sticking to those things in the first place.
Yeah, that's so true.
That's some truth.
Yeah.
So like, welcome to the self-improvement course you did not ask for. Like, this is the quarantine.
Yes, for sure.
It makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. Sophie, this is the last question that we always ask people, but if you could through our audience, grab them by the face and from a distance. Yeah, we're not doing that anymore.
Virtually.
If you look them in the eyeballs and say and remind them of something that's true, or communicate with them something they need to be encouraged by, or something they need to hear, what would that be?
That healthcare for all is important. Healthcare is a human right. I would remind you that you can do this. I know it's hard, but you're an entrepreneur. You can do hard things. I would remind you that you are more creative, resilient, and resourceful than you have any idea about. You just didn't know before. Now you're getting to find out. So show yourself how true that is, and have fun doing it, and take time to acknowledge those things about you. I think that's so important.
Yeah.
So just like grind it out, but also like clap for yourself.
Yeah.
I think that's really important. Take a walk outside. You're still allowed to do that. I love you.
Yeah.
These are great. I think that's all I have. I'm like looking back through my notes. It's obviously important to be gentle with yourself throughout the entire entrepreneurial journey, but that never means to not do. You can be gentle. And actually, this is crazy. This is exactly what I talked about this morning on my, I do a live every morning. And this was what I talked about today, is you can accomplish your goals without being cruel to yourself. You can be so gentle and kind and give yourself grace and still kill it and achieve your goals and be who you want to be. And in fact, you can't do those things separate. They have to come hand in hand. That's what I have to say.
That's beautiful.
And now I'll let you go.
With the face.
We let you go, person. No, I love it. Thanks for hopping on here, Sophie. Sophie is one of the people who hangs out with us inside of the Gem Club. So if that's something that, if you're an entrepreneur, small business owner, or just like a scrappy creative person who doesn't feel like they fit into a good box, there's some people who are in there who hang out in there. They're like, I don't know what my business is, but I'd like to talk about this stuff. I was like,
can I say there is nothing in the Gem Club that doesn't apply to people working in corporate as well.
I agree, especially right now. If you're not an innovator, pack your bags. This is the time. Yeah, I agree.
No, that's cool. Thanks for that. Yeah, that's a true thing. It's hard to sometimes communicate all that. There's a bunch of beautiful people. Sophie's one of them. The other people that we've had interviewed before. So you can go back through our YouTube channel or Facebook videos or Twitter videos or back to the Gem Club or wherever. You can just search for things. But other interviews that we've done are sitting in there. And then we hang out every day inside the Gem Club. So you can check that out. There's a free week trial. Pretty easy to hop in and check it out. And then leave if you don't like it. That's fine.
Totally.
I'm cool with that.
For sure.
Thank you so much, Sophie. Appreciate it.
Thank you guys so much.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. And then it stays live.